in for a vacationing Brian Wilson is Susan Paricchio. Hello, Susan.
Oh, good morning, Larry.
Susan, of course, being the chief congressional correspondent for Washington Examiner, you always keep an eye on the primaries in primary season to see if any of the incumbents are having issues. These are the people you cover.
Yep.
Also, a man who covers them intimately is Bret Baier of Special Report with Bret Baier on Fox News Channel, and he joins us now. Hey, Bret.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Well, last night, Senator Lamar Alexander, a unique Thursday primary was held in Tennessee, and Lamar Alexander did fend off his Tea Party challenger, but it wasn't an easy fight for Lamar Alexander.
No, it wasn't, but perhaps easier than some people thought it was going to be because, some out there gave Joe Carr a real shot at ousting Alexander, but it was called relatively early. Polls closed at 8, and I think it was called right after the president spoke, so 9:30. And frankly, it is that was the last best opportunity for a Tea Party supported candidate to oust an establishment incumbent senator.
Right.
And I think there's definitely a question about the influence of the Tea Party, and I think it's still significant.
I agree. Yeah, they won a big one in Virginia. They ousted Eric Cantor. That was a huge, perhaps the biggest victory ever for the Tea Party. But it doesn't mean they're going to win everything else. I think sometimes they get the impression,
That's all right. Well, but even beyond that, when you talk about the influence of the Tea Party or a conservative grassroots movement, it's not always just about winning these primaries. It's about forcing the agenda in these primaries. And a lot of these incumbents who were fending off these challenges, their tactic, their strategy, it was not saying, oh, you don't want to vote for that guy, he's a crazy Tea Partier. Their tactic was, no, I agree with him. I'm just like him.
Yeah, no, they co-opted a lot of the, fire and talking points, and much like Bill Clinton used to do with Republicans when he was president, triangulation.
Yes.
And they've absorbed a lot of those issues and have convinced people that they can go back and fight for that those different issues.
Right. Interesting. And now we've got this situation in Montana where it was looking like this Senate seat was going to go Republican anyway, but now things got worse.
You're talking about John Walsh?
Yes, things got worse because John Walsh, who's the incumbent, who took over for Senator Baucus when he became the ambassador to China, he has now been forced to drop out of the race because of these plagiarism charges. What do you think of that? It sounds like this is going to be perhaps an easy pickup for Republicans now.
Yeah, no, I think it's a in the words of George Tenet, a slam dunk for Republicans. I think that the question is, who will Democrats put up? The only person that could viably, I guess, mount a challenge is Brian Schweitzer. He's a wild card, former governor.
But he doesn't want to do it, though. And he's got the baggage, so there's no one.
Number one, but number two, he's got baggage. He's had a couple of really aggressive statements that have caused some problems, and with this short amount of time, less than 90 days, it's really tough for anybody to pick up that much momentum. So I think you put one in the column of Republicans. That was expected to be one, but it is one. So now they have 5 to go.
Bret Baier, shifting from domestic politics, the president last night gave a speech, as you alluded to earlier, authorizing potential limited airstrikes in Iraq and also some humanitarian aid in Kurdistan. But also, setting that aside for a moment, or if you could look at that in the grand scope of foreign affairs right now, with Russia and Ukraine and that continuing problem, the appearance that the ceasefire in Israel with Hamas has now ended, and there is renewed rockets being fired from Gaza, and Israel is responding. And a host of other international issues that the president has to face. The narrative and the news cycle is not working in the administration's favor with regard to his foreign policy. I know that you discuss it often with Mr. Krauthammer in your all-star panel.
Yeah. No, it's not. You can throw a dart at a map on the wall and hit someplace that's a problem. and that's not a good thing. And in this environment that is extremely hot and fluid and really a problem for an administration, the last thing that this administration wants to do is to go back into Iraq and fight that battle. I mean, they tout pulling troops out of Iraq as the major foreign policy success. So I'm sure this is extremely difficult. Anytime you make a decision to put military in harm's way, obviously it's a difficult decision, as the president mentioned last night. But on a different level, on a ideological, political level, it's also difficult. I'm interested to see how extensive the airstrikes will be. I know there's a big push in the Pentagon to have it be more broad, to have the close air support for the Kurdish and Iraqi troops that they're requesting, and to have some weapons funneled to the Kurds who are really trying to hold off ISIS, this terrorist army, from coming into Erbil. That's a big deal. And you look at the map of how much that terrorist army now controls. Guys that are crucifying people if they're not up to the standards of Islam, their brand of it. That's a huge world issue.
I thought your panel last night was great, making the case that the president has promised in various speeches to stop genocide and that it is a priority for the administration, yet he's really in a tough position. He campaigned in part one his presidency off staying out of these conflicts, yet here we are, and this is looking more unavoidable for him. And as you say, if they do broaden those airstrikes, how far do we go?
Yeah, I think it's a major balancing act that they are doing, the National Security Council is doing. But also look, Susan, at the speeches he's given, the Libya speech that he gave, and it sounded a lot like preventing genocide that he mentioned last night. But he's never made that speech with Syria.
Yeah.
And there's 160,000 plus who have been killed under the hands of Bashar al-Assad and that civil war. So, the dichotomy there is really interesting.
Bret Baier, we'll have to leave it there, but we know this weekend you'll be watching the PGA Championship. Do you have a quick prediction?
I like Sergio. Sergio. Let me make one tease. Tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern, tomorrow night, 9 p.m., Sunday night, 10 p.m., is an hour on healthcare, Obamacare, called Live Free or Die. It's about New Hampshire. And we put about 6 months into it. It's worth watching or DVRing.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for that. We love those special programs that you do on Fox News. Thanks, Bret. We'll look forward to it.
All right. Have a good